Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County meetup on electrifying the Empire State with all-electric, emissions-free homes. I'm Sherry Gray. Lori Dawson and I are the co-chairs of the meetups. And although Lori is not here in spirit tonight, she is in spirit. She's not in person, she is in spirit. Meetups are a way for us to come together to explore, understand, and advocate for issues that matter to us. They are focused on our members and their interests. I would like to remind you of our upcoming league events, which can also be found on our website, LWV Saratoga. On Monday, May 2nd, we have Advocacy Day, League of Women Voters of New York State. Obviously, this would interest most everybody who's on, regardless of which League of Women Voters in New York State that you are a member. On Wednesday, May 17th, here in Saratoga, we have a planning for the 2023-24 meetups and programs. We are looking for your ideas on both events and meetups for the next year. And let me just add, we have a lot of people from outside of Saratoga, and if you have any ideas on meetups you'd like to see us do, please go ahead and submit them. We would love to hear from anyone. On Friday, June 2nd to 4th, there's the League of Women Voters New York State Convention, of which I'm sure many of you are going to be attending. On Wednesday, June 14th, it's the Saratoga League of Women Voters 57th annual meeting, and this will be, I believe, at the State Park, and it'll be a kind of a picnic. I have a few rules for our meetups. Please give your full attention to the speaker. Please welcome different points of view without judgment. Mute your microphone unless you're called upon to speak. So right now, I hope everyone has a muted microphone. You should see a little cross through a microphone on your screen. Be an active listener by minimizing any noise or visual distractions. Follow guidance for submitting questions or commentary. You can raise your hand or post something in the chat function. For those that are unfamiliar, the chat function is down on the bottom, across the bottom bar, and you can post questions in there just by typing them in to where it says type message here. And then we also have the raise hand function. You can use the chat function anytime during the presentation, and we'll be monitoring that, or I should say someone will be monitoring that. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll be using the raise hand or the chat, whichever you feel more comfortable with. Also, when we get to the Q&A portion, which is after the presentation, allow others to speak or ask their questions or make comments before doing a second one. I would like to thank our 4-league Capital District Environmental Committee from Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady, and also thank our co-sponsor, New York State League of Women Voters. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to Joanna Lasher, who chairs that committee.
Oh, thank you, Sherry. Welcome, everybody. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to introduce another member of our 4-league Environment Committee, Ann Erling, who will be monitoring the chat and the hand-raising function to identify questions for the Q&A session. On behalf of the 4-County League of Women Voters Capital District Environment Committee, as well as the co-sponsor, New York State League of Women Voters, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Anshul Gupta. He's a research scientist, mostly in computer science, but has touched upon areas in energy, materials, and decarbonization in which he has multiple publications, as well as 1 issued and 3 pending patents. He has volunteered in multiple roles with the New York State Chapter's Coalition of the Climate Reality Project, an international organization Al Gore that prepares its members to use their voices and everyday choices to fight climate change. He's worked on several climate campaigns of various sizes and scopes, and is a frequent presence at the Capitol and at public hearings when he's not in Baltimore. I'm told that Anshul got started on this campaign after converting his own home to all electric operations and disconnecting his gas service. Without further ado, I'll turn the meeting over to Anshul.
Good afternoon, good evening. I will start sharing my screen. Okay. Are you able to see the first slide, the introduction slide?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so now I'm not able to see your faces, and let me start. So thank you to the League of Voters, League of Women Voters, New York State, as well as the Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady chapters for inviting me to talk about electrifying the Empire State Building. My name is Anshul Gupta. I'm a researcher with IBM, and as Joanna introduced, I volunteer for the Climate Reality Project. Climate Reality Project is a member of the Renewable Heat Now campaign, working to decarbonize New York State buildings. And in a couple of days, I'll also assume the role of a senior policy advisor for New Yorkers for Clean Power. And I'll start with the caveat that the views expressed in this presentation have not been endorsed by any of the organizations listed here. These are my own. Okay. So, the presentation is organized into 4 fairly unrelated sections. And the hope is that everyone from this group with very diverse interests and backgrounds and reasons for being here finds at least some parts that are useful or interesting to them. And I'll take brief questions at the end of each of these sections, and then we'll also have Q&A at the end. So, so we're going to talk about the science, technology, economics, and politics of building electrification in New York State. So, so let's start with the motivation for electrification. Experts all over the world agree that the most cost-efficient and energy-efficient way to eliminate carbon pollution that's destroying our climate from buildings and as well as personal transportation for many sectors is to almost fully electrify them. And even though the fossil fuel industry is doing all it can to promote alternate fuels like renewable natural gas or biofuels, the most cost-effective and actually effective way to decarbonize these sectors remains electrification. So let's start with talking about the climate problem a little bit, because that's where this all started. How bad is the climate problem that triggered all of this? I'll start with an analogy that all of us can relate to. So on February 20th, 2020, President Trump proclaimed that we have 15 cases of coronavirus in the entire country, and in a couple of days it will just over. Now let's recall how the pandemic actually unfolded in the coming days after this statement. So the point is that although the scientists were predicting it, uh, most people couldn't wrap their heads around the exponentially uh, uh, most people couldn't wrap their heads around the exponentially growing COVID catastrophe that was coming, and the fact that we are underestimating the climate crisis, just like we underestimated the COVID. This is not an overstatement, uh, and that's reflected in all the IPCC reports that continue to get more and more dire. So this is actually not even the most recent one that was released last month. This is from last year, when the UN Secretary General declared climate change code red for humanity. So what do we mean by code red for humanity? Um, Human activities have caused about 1.1 to 1.2 degrees Celsius of average global warming so far, uh, up over pre-industrial time. And if we continue on a current trajectory without immediate transformative action, we are headed to at least 2.7 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. And this 2.7 degrees includes all the pledges at the last COP that from all the nations. And it's reasonable to expect that most of these pledges will not be fully met. Um, so the climate impact worsen exponentially with temperature. 2 degrees is not quite as bad as 1 degree, it's more like 10 times worse. And 3 degrees could be another 10 times more damaging. Uh, and the end of the century is well within the lifetime of a child born today. And so, again, to connect what happened with COVID to what's happening with the climate, um, the sea level is rising, and that's a problem. But that's only part of the problem. If we don't dramatically reduce fossil fuel consumption now, the rate at which the sea level is rising will itself continue to rise. So if it's rising at, say, X millimeter per year today, 10 years from now, it could be rising at 2x, and so on and so forth. So that's what gives rise to the scary compounding effect we saw with the COVID. Um, and so, so basically, the time for baby steps is over, and we need big, bold steps to tackle the climate problem, and we need them now. Um, the good news is that we have all the knowledge, tools, and financial resources uh, to actually do what needs to be done. And the only thing that's missing is political courage and political will. And this is true by and large for the world, definitely for the United States, and also for New York State. In New York State, now coming back to the topic, today's topic, buildings is the biggest source of carbon pollution in and a big reason why buildings is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York State is that we use a lot of natural gas in buildings, which is a product marketed as natural gas, extract methane. And methane inevitably leaks. It's impossible to make the whole natural gas extraction, transportation, delivery system leak proof. And methane itself is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. It's 83 times more effective than the more common culprit, carbon dioxide, in the first 20 years of its release. About a third of all the warming to date is actually from methane and not carbon dioxide. But that's not all. Given where we are today, according to IPCC, in the next 10 to 20 years, we can expect almost half of all the warming from what IPCC calls short-lived climate forces, and methane is the primary short-lived climate forces. So this is an excerpt from the IPCC report from 2021. Clearly says that on the scale of next 10 to 20 years, SLFC's the contribution is at least as large as due to a year's worth of the carbon dioxide emissions. So and natural gas actually is for all practical purposes, worse than coal. We were told that natural gas is going to be a bridge fuel between coal and a clean energy future, and that was a big lie in the fossil fuel industry. Natural gas is at least as bad as coal, if not worse. And the climate is not the only problem with burning fossil fuels in buildings. The health impacts are enormous. In New York State, we lose 2,000 people and $22 billion in healthcare impacts from burning fossil fuels in buildings. And this is the impact of the outdoor pollution caused by fossil fuels. So when we burn sort of gas in a boiler, in a furnace, there's a chimney, and then the pollution goes out. So this is from the outdoor pollution. We're not even talking about indoor pollution yet. That's the cost of outdoor pollution is 2,000 lives, $22 billion a year in New York State. Now, talking of indoor pollution, 19% of all childhood asthma in New York State can be attributed to just cooking with gas. So that's from the asthma triggers like nitrogen oxide that come out of a gas stove. And these impacts are disproportionate. So, for example, a family of 4 people living in a next mansion probably does the same amount of cooking as a family of 4 living in a small house. The pollution is more concentrated in a smaller dwelling. Similarly, the outdoor pollution is more concentrated in denser neighborhoods where there are many small houses packed into one block, and it disproportionately impacts low-income communities, people of color, infants and children. They're more sensitive to pollution, pregnant women, exactly for the same reason, and individuals with pre-existing conditions and older adults. So any segment of the population that's more sensitive, as well as the ones that have more a higher degree of exposure. So I covered some climate science behind building electrification and some sort of some aspects of the health, some health science aspects. And I'll pause for questions from the science section, if any.
You have one question in
Was
the
that
chat.
gotten,
You have one question in the chat. Sorry, I don't know if someone was speaking. From Barb Thomas, can you discuss the role that increasing world population has on climate change?
So it's a very controversial topic, the role of population and climate change, and there isn't a lot of agreement between sort of policymakers and experts. So one view is that we can support a fairly we can support the current population as well as even more a higher sort of population than today's if we curtail our consumption. And for example, in Europe, the per capita emissions, I think, are much lower than in the US, almost half. I don't know the exact number. And they have almost the same sort of quality of life. In India, the per capita emissions are 1/10 of that of the United States. Even though China's total emissions are now higher than those of the United States, their per capita emissions and per capita sort of energy use is much lower. So we definitely cannot sustain even our current population at our current levels of consumption. So we have a choice. We can support higher population at lower levels of consumption and lower levels of per capita emissions. But if we want to continue emitting at the rate at which Americans sort of emit, then clearly we cannot. Even the current population is unsustainable.
We have another question in the chat, but I want to make sure if there's someone who wants to ask their question directly. If you want to raise your hand or speak up. Oh, I see Marion waving her hand.
Right. I would like to know, so you got off, you disconnected the gas line, and I would like to know if you can kind of, I don't know, are there any, what exactly did you do to get off fossil fuels? Because I'm trying to do a deep dive into that right now, and it's so hard to know what to do.
So that will be covered in the next section.
Okay, thank you.
Back to the chat from Don and Lois Porter. Will the supply of electricity be sufficient to power all of the new applications?
Yes, absolutely, and this is something we'll cover also when we cover the politics part, the fossil fuel industry's disinformation campaign, and this is a part of that. Most of you probably lived through this. In mid-1950s, we had no air conditioning. No homes had air conditioning. Within 2 decades, almost the entire country had central air conditioning or some sort of air conditioning. And we did that in 2 decades. So we can very easily do the same thing in 2 decades for heat pumps. And this is a gradual process. We're not just turning the switch and converting everything, all the gas used to electricity use like tomorrow. Obviously, that will break the grid. So the grid as well as the electrification will sort of grow in tandem. Another very important point to realize is that electrical appliances, electrical heat pumps, electric cars, anything that runs on electricity consumes only a small fraction of total energy than their fossil fuel counterparts. A gas engine barely converts 20% of its energy into the mechanical energy of your car. Most of the energy goes out as heat. It's wasted. It's extremely inefficient. And EVs consume 3 to 4 times less energy. So now the same thing with heat pumps. Heat pumps also consume anywhere from 2 to 5 times less energy than gas. So we will not have to increase our grid capacity by a factor, by the same energy delivery amount that the amount of energy that the gas is delivering is not the amount of energy we'll need to deliver through our wire, because heat pumps do the same job with much less energy.
Are we keeping track of time? You have 1, 2, 3 more questions on the chat, but we could hold them for the next break. I'm not sure.
Okay, let's take one more and then we'll move on.
Okay, Darnell was up first. Why haven't we required all new buildings to have solar panels on the roofs? How likely is the building rules for no gas will pass? And there's a lot of questions, Darnell. And can the electrical infrastructure handle it, which is somewhat related to that previous question?
Yeah, so electrical infrastructure can definitely handle it. We have covered that. A good question about solar panels. So when you're putting solar panels, you're adding something, you're not replacing anything. And there's an upfront cost. I have solar panels, and but this is not something I even though I'm sort of very pro-climate, I wouldn't recommend that we mandate something, because that has it puts a financial burden on people. But when we're talking about heating our homes and water heating, we're just substituting. Everyone needs hot water. Everyone needs to heat their home. So it's not that we are asking people to go over and above what they're already doing. One reason why building and transportation electrification is so much more important is that, let's say, a renewable energy project, or like putting solar panels on your roof, that it gets delayed by a year. So you have 1 year's worth of extra emissions. But when you buy a gas car, you've locked in emissions for 10 years, because now that gas car is going to continue to emit for the next 10 years. And then coming to buildings, every new building built with the gas hookup is going to continue to have emissions for the next 50 or more years, for several decades, unless we spend extra money to now convert that building. So which is why all electric new buildings not only make a lot of sense, they have much building electrification and new building electrification. It has so much more sort of climate impact than some of the other things. We will take more questions at the end, and I'm happy to sort of stay as long as people want to stay. But in the interest of finishing this entire presentation, hopefully by 8 o'clock, let's move on to the next topic, which is the technology. So from science, we're moving to the actual technology that you can use in your homes to get off gas. So this part addresses if we don't use fossil fuels in the buildings, then what do we use? Space heating consumes almost 2/3 of the fossil fuels consumed in buildings that are hooked onto fossil fuels. And the electric alternative to fossil fuels for space heating is what we call a heat pump. Heat pumps don't make heat by themselves, unlike the boilers and the furnaces. Heat pumps simply move heat from one place to another. And in order to sort of move this heat, they need some energy, which is their electricity consumption. But the electricity that the heat pumps consume is not being used to directly create heat. And this is what makes heat pumps extremely efficient, because they are pulling heat from other sources. And heat pumps are actually something we all have in our homes. Our refrigerator is a heat pump. Our refrigerator is moving the heat from inside the fridge and inside the freezer, and it's moving it out into your kitchen. So if you put your hand in the back of the refrigerator, it can be warm, because the thermal energy is being transferred from inside the fridge to outside. Our air conditioners are actually heat pumps. They move the heat from inside our home and throw it outside. Heat pumps can be viewed as two-way air conditioners. In the summer, they'll take the heat from your home and throw it outside. And in the winter, they'll pull the heat from outside and bring it inside your home. So there are two types of heat pumps: air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. And let's look at them. So air source heat pump, basically, as I said, is a two-way air conditioner. And as the schematic shows, in the summer, it's working just like an air conditioner. It has a compressor. In addition to the air conditioner, what it has is the capability of reversing its operation. So in the winter, it would bring heat from outside air and sort of warm your home with it. You may ask, how is it pulling heat from the winter when the air outside is so cold? So the absolute zero temperature at which there is no sort of heat, no thermal energy in the air is less than minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So air at 0 degrees Fahrenheit is warmer than air at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So that gives you an idea that very cold air at 0 degrees Fahrenheit has more heat than air at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what accounts for the temperature difference. There's always some thermal energy in the air, even at very cold temperatures, that the heat pumps can pull. Ground source heat pumps are more efficient because they do this exchange with the ground and not with the air. And the ground in most of New York State is at a constant temperature of 50 degrees Celsius, both in the summer and the winter. So, so in the summer, the heat pump is pulling the energy from your home, putting it in the ground, and in the winter, it's extracting heat from the ground and bringing it to your home. So in today's presentation, I'm not going to talk about the details of how you can actually install a heat pump in your house, because the financial incentives are not uniform throughout the state. They depend on your local utility and how much money you save relative to sort of fossil fuels. Also depends on the relative price of gas and electricity in of your utility, and that varies through the state. The Inflation Reduction Act, the federal sort of IRA that recently passed, it provides thousands of dollars of incentives, and Janice Kruger, who is the New York State chapter lead for Rewiring America, has volunteered to sort of act as a contact person if you have any questions on incentives. They also have a calculator at their website that you can access to this QR code. But I would add that all the IRA incentives are not yet available, and many of them will be available next year. And this website may or may not be up to date with all the New York State incentives in your area. So other sources of information would be your local Heat Smart program or local sustainable program, and of course, Rewiring America is the resource. You can contact Janice if you're considering electrifying your home, and she'll be able to give you more specific information. So the concept of ground source heat pump can actually be transferred to community level thermal networks, and these thermal networks can be even more efficient and cost effective than ground source heat pumps. Of course, this would entail changing our entire energy delivery system from a gas network to a thermal energy network. But such networks have been shown to be practical, and we are going to be starting some pilots in New York State fairly soon. I just wanted to sort of bring this idea to your attention without going through a lot of details. A great aspect of community thermal networks is that they allow for smooth transition of workforce from gas delivery system to thermal energy delivery system, because they require exactly the same pipe skills, and the actual pipes are identical. They're just color coded differently. So community thermal networks basically have pipes filled with water at a certain temperature, and your heat pump, instead of having its private bore to exchange heat with the ground, would actually exchange heat with the sort of the community network that is that would be available to you, sort of, if and when these networks are actually implemented. Okay, so this is a picture of our statewide electricity demand for the entire year of 2021. And so someone asked if our grid will be able to handle this electrification. So not only will the grid be able to adapt with the electrification, in the near term, it won't even if we don't do anything to the grid, for the next 10 years, even our current grid can handle electrification. And the reason for that is that our demand peaks in the summer. So our grid has the capacity to deliver the peak summer demand. If you can see my cursor, this is the capacity of our grid. Now, when we add heat pumps, we are adding load in the winter, and this winter load, it will estimates are that this winter load, if we start electrifying our buildings now, will take 10 years to increase to the level of our summer load. And let's not forget that while all this is happening, the climate change is getting worse, our summers are getting hotter, and we should actually be worried about how our grid is going to handle climate change, not how our grid is going to handle building electricity. So it's the climate change that is stressing our grid more than building electricity. Okay, so from space heating, we move to water heating. Water heating consumes about a third of energy on an average in a typical home. 2/3 of the energy goes for space heating, 1/3 for water heating. And there are electric alternatives for water heating as well. So now I'm going through sort of all the appliances that use gas and what the electric alternatives are. And hopefully that will answer the question that someone asked about how to get off gas and what we did in our home to get off gas. So the electric alternatives are basically two types of electric water heaters, ordinary resistance water heaters, and there are heat pump water heaters. There are pros and cons. Heat pump water heaters are more expensive, but they use much less energy than the sort of plain vanilla electric water heaters. And I suppose these slides will be sent to everyone in attendance, so I don't want to read everything on the slide. But you can see that there are pros and cons, and when installing one, you should sort of take these pros and cons into account and see what would work best in your home, in your situation, in the location in your home where you want to pump this water heaters. Because heat pump water heaters, although they're more efficient, they cannot be used just anywhere. For example, you cannot put them inside a closet because they need air circulation. And then both types of water heaters can actually be connected to your heat pump, to your ground source heat pump. If you decide to install a ground source heat pump, or any house that has a ground source heat pump, so that it works in conjunction with the heat pump, and that can make this operation extremely efficient. For example, in the summer, you can get your entire water heater, hot water for free, because in the summer you are extracting the heat from your home and you are disposing that heat off, and your combined hot water system and the home heat pump can transfer that heat into your hot water delivery system, and that's the kind of system we have in our house. So when we're cooling our house, that all that heat that we're trying to get rid of, part of that heat we put in our water tank, and the combination of water heater and the heat pump can actually do that, and that's free hot water in the summer. Clothes dryer. So clothes dryer consume a very small fraction of total household energy, about 1 to 2%. And again, you have ordinary resistance electric clothes dryer, and you can have a heat pump clothes dryer, a heat pump based clothes dryer. And the table is the pros and cons. The ordinary ordinary clothes dryer electric clothes dryer would be cheaper, but it consumes a lot more electricity because heat pump systems are just inherently extremely efficient. And there are some other advantages. A heat pump dryer does not need a vent, so you have more flexibility on where you put it. And heat pump dryers, there are many models that can be hooked to a regular 120 volt outlet. They don't need a 240 volt outlet that an electric dryer, ordinary electric dryer would need. And then last but not the least, cooking. So although cooking consumes only 2 to 3% of the total energy, it is, as most of you have heard, this is the most sort of controversial part of building electrification. And it seems that a lot of people love their gas stove. So, but many people are unaware that most households in the United States don't have a gas cooking system. 60% of cooking in the United States is done already electric, and only about 40% is gas. Although in New York State, gas cooking seems to be a little more prevalent, but there are excellent electric alternatives. You may have heard of induction cooktop, but that's not the only game in town. There are great radiant cooktops also, and the table lists their pros and cons. Radiant cooktops are cheaper. They can use any flat bottom utensils, whereas the induction cooktops need special utensils that are magnetic just because of the way they work. Induction cooktops don't produce any heat by themselves. They sort of just heat up the cooking utensil directly through a pulsating magnetic field, which is why they are so much more efficient, because the heat is actually generated directly inside your utensil or your pan. It's not moved from your cooktop into the utensil. And I will not read the rest of the pros and cons. You can always look at the slide later. Oh, one thing I'd like to mention is that the radiant cooktops are not the same. They're not the old sort of coil-based system. The modern radiant cooktops are just sort of a flat glass top, and they can be extremely fast. If any of you have experience with using those the coil-based electric cooktops, you may remember that they're extremely slow to heat up. That's not the case with the modern radiant cooktops. And here's actually an image of two cooking ranges from the same company. One is induction, one is radiant, and you cannot, unless somebody tells you which one is which, they are virtually indistinguishable in the way they actually look. But the mechanism by which they produce heat is very different. And so this is an image of a radiant cooktop that we have in our house. It's a picture from my kitchen, and as you can see, it's flat glass, and this is how it looks when it's on. And the heat is coming mostly in the form of infrared radiation from the embedded coil to your fan. This is an induction cooktop also in our home, which just has sort of two surfaces instead of typical four. And an advantage of having two surfaces is that this is a 120 volt system, and it plugs into a regular outlet. It does not need a 240 volt outlet that this guy here needs. You can also get very inexpensive portable induction cooktops for under $100, and this is what one looks like. So, any questions on this part? I know I sped up a little.
You have quite a few questions over on the chat. You still have one left over from the first half.
So let's take a couple of questions on this topic, and then we'll do all the questions at the end. Remaining questions at the end.
Expanding on world population changes, there are many areas of the world where solar and wind work and areas where they don't. And a lot of areas where they don't are where high population growth is located. How do we support the green transition where infrastructure, low sun and wind, and high population growth exist? And how will all of this play into climate refugees?
Okay, so it's a multi-part question, and it's not sort of exactly within the scope of the topic that we are covering today. In most parts of the world, some combination of non-fossil energy work, and which particular combination is most suitable for which part of which sort of region? It's a very local question. So and we can talk about this a little more if we have time at the end. Let's take questions that are that pertain to building electrification.
Well, I think we're going to have to, sorry, I'm trying to find the full gallery view. Go to the room here because there's nothing in the chat that specifically applies to what we covered in the second half as far as I can tell.
Monica,
Nancy Tudor asked, so when a builder says that building all electric homes will be more expensive, that's more accurate? She's asking a question, is that the case?
Yes, that's not accurate, and that will come in the next part, which is the economics.
I also asked a question about particularly heat pumps, water heat pumps. And not only were they more expensive, because right now I'm building a home and I did look into those options, but the bigger problem right now is finding someone who is knowledgeable about those systems and could install those systems. And quite honestly, in the area that I'm building, I couldn't find that.
Yes, so I'll cover the cost question a little later, because the cost has to be compared with the cost of the gas connection. But I completely agree. We do have a problem with the shortage of qualified installers, which is one of the reasons why. And it's not installing the. Okay, so let me complete the chain of thought I had. So which is why it's important to actually pass legislation which mandates all electric construction starting some reasonable date in the future. Because when that happens, the builders will know that starting this date, we have to build all electric, and they will actually invest in sort of in their workforce and just sort of moving on. And for ground source heat pumps, we do need special skills for drilling, and we do need special equipment. But for air source heat pumps, we don't need any new skills. And anyone installing the traditional HVAC system can just do sort of very simple training and become adept at installing air source heat pumps. They have to sort of do a different set of energy calculations to size the system properly, but the installation part is identical to installing a central air conditioner. And the reason we don't keep the contractors moving on is because of the inertia. It's 7:55. We covered only 2 sections, so let me move on to the next part, and we will continue with the remaining questions later. Okay, so the economics of electrifying homes and buildings. So first, let's let's talk briefly about building new homes that are all electric. There are multiple studies. I'm just sort of quoting one because it has nice pictures, and I was able to pull out some of these nice pictures. Almost anywhere in New York State, building a new all-electric home is cheaper than building it with a fossil fuel hookup. The reason is that any home is going to have electrical connection anyway, so you don't have to do anything extra. Then a single system provides both heating and cooling. You don't have to sort of install two different systems and build everything to deliver the energy to two different systems. So it's a new home with heat pump is simply simpler to build. There are fewer moving parts, and you have to pay for a single energy system. So it's not hard to see why all electric construction would be less expensive. In real world, you may not see that in your actual cost, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So that was the cost of build. Now, how about the actual cost of energy? So this report, this analysis, and by the way, when you get the slides, all the slides have links to the actual sources embedded in them. So if you click on a picture or a link in the slide, that will take you to the actual source of that information, or sort of an in-depth article or a report. So anyway, this report shows that a new all-electric building would cost their owners less in monthly payments almost everywhere in New York State, with one exception, and that was one climate zone, and this is just sort of the annual cost. Now, one caveat that the prices, the relative gas and electricity prices that this report used was from the last 10 years or so, and the math has changed a little bit in favor of electricity because natural gas prices have gone up so much. Electricity prices have also gone up, but gas prices have gone up more than the electricity prices, most of New York State. So basically, all electric new buildings are cheaper to build and cheaper to operate on an average. Sort of, there could be discrepancies in specific individual cases. And I'd also add that Washington State became the first state to mandate electric heating in buildings, and their all-electric mandate for all buildings, small buildings, large buildings, multi-story buildings, skyscrapers, single-family homes, everything goes into effect in July. Basically, in 3 months from now, there will be no fossil fuel new construction in Washington State. And the part of Washington State east of the Cascades can actually get very cold. Then there are these fears that heat pumps don't work in cold climates, or in very cold weather. But Montreal has an all-electric mandate for small buildings starting the beginning of 2024. So within 9 months, after 9 months from now, all new single-family homes have to be all electric in Montreal, and the large buildings starting 2025. So clearly, if heat pumps work in Montreal, they work in most of New York State. So now let's talk about the cost of. So when we look at the cost of all electric building, we have to look at that cost in the context of what we have now and what the current system is costing us, and then do a cost comparison. So our gas bills have two components: the supply charges and the delivery charges. The supply charges basically pay for the fuel, but the delivery charges pay for building and maintaining the gas infrastructure. Now, most people don't know that we give away new gas hookup for free in New York State, and actually in many other states. And the cost is added to everybody else's bill. So, so somebody was talking about installing a geothermal heat pump in a new home. Now, the problem is that the builder has to put the bill for that geothermal heat pump. But getting a new gas connection, sometimes it entails a mains extension. It definitely needs a service line. That also costs thousands of dollars. But our current law, the way the public service law is structured, the builder doesn't have to pay that cost. That cost is passed on to all of you. So even if you have nothing to do with electrifying buildings, you are paying the cost of the state not transitioning away from gas, because every new gas hookup adds to your delivery charges, because we are giving those away for free. The total annual ratepayer impact of that is $200 million, but that's not all. Our gas delivery system is aging, is getting old, and we are also replacing parts of the existing system. Now, the cost of replacing these leak-prone pipes can be as high as $60,000 per customer. One of the reasons these costs are so high is that any new investment in the gas infrastructure is extremely problematic, because these new pipes and any new infrastructure has a physical service life of 80 years or 70 to 80 years. But we won't be burning that, using that gas 80 years from now. So this infrastructure will need to be depreciated, and all the depreciation costs will add up to basically will result in spiraling spiraling delivery charges that you see on your bill, unless we do something about transitioning of gas in a systematic manner. And I'm actually going to show an example from a real rate case from Con Edison. This is from last year. Con Edison put this application for a rate increase, and they were in their first proposal. They backed off a little because of sort of opposition to this insane rate request. They were asking for $161 million of extra of additional funding each year for new gas infrastructure. Now, in the same request, they're also asking for $64 million in depreciation charges. And where these charges are coming from, they are actually admitting that they want to reduce certain gas asset service lives by 5 years in alignment with the gas transition that is expected to result from the CLCPA implementation. CLCPA is the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which is New York's climate law. But even without the climate law, people will be getting off gas systems because the alternatives are just simply superior. And I cite my example as a case in point, because I made this in 2021 at the end of life of the air conditioning system and the boiler in our home. And at that time, I hadn't even heard of the CLCPA. The decision that we made was based purely on long-term economics, because having a ground source heat pump increases our home value. So when I resell my home, I'm going to recover everything. And in the meantime, because the new owners will see how low their utility bills will be. So a new home buyer would be happy to have a modern, healthier system and pay slightly higher monthly mortgage in exchange for much lower utility bill. And that's where sort of I'm going to recover a lot of the cost of installing a ground source heat pump in my home. But until I sell my home, I enjoy the benefits of lower utility bill. So we have to sort of think about the cost in a holistic manner. Anyway, so coming back to this, Con Edison is saying that we need to sort of reduce the service life of some of our assets because they're not going to be used for the entire service life. But at the same time, we want to build new infrastructure worth $161 million a year. And it makes no sense while they're depreciating $64 million worth of existing functioning infrastructure, because this new infrastructure will have to have even more than 5 years taken off its service life. And on that cost, the cost of everything is going to be passed on to the ratepayer. It already is being passed on to the ratepayer. And the utilities, it's a money grab for the utilities, and they're doing this because they can, because our public service law allows them to do. So, questions on the economics part. Part of the reason why it appears that installing a heat pump in new construction is more expensive than having a gas hookup is the way we are doing this accounting. The builder is paying for the heat pump, but the builder is not paying, and for an equally costly or even more costly gas system. And those costs, they're not disappearing just because the builder is not paying. Those costs are being added to all gas customers' utility bills, and it's raising everybody's gas prices. The questions on this part.
There was a lot of good conversation in the chat, but I didn't see any new questions. If anybody has a question related to this most recent segment, feel free to ask or type it into the chat.
If not, then in the interest of time, we can move on to my favorite section, which I think is the most interesting of the whole section. And then I'll be happy to stay for as long as people want to answer questions. Is that okay? Okay. So so we covered the science, technology, and the economic, and of course none of these are by any means comprehensive, because each of these are sort of very detailed topics for a 1 hour or longer presentation on their own. Okay. So so as I stated at the beginning that we have all the tools, resources, and the technology to make the transition off of fossil fuels. And the only reason the world and the United States and New York State is not doing that fast enough is because of lack of political will. For example, our legislature and our governor has the power to change the public service law so that you all don't have the obligation to actually pay for new gas hookups. And that will actually lower everyone's gas bills, even the people who are on gas in the future, and immediately flip the economics in favor of all electric buildings. By the way, all even with the gas subsidies, it is a subsidy for new gas hookups. Even with the gas subsidies, all electric new homes are sort of at least as at par in cost, because there's so many other cost savings that come from a single energy system powering your home and a single piece of equipment doing both heating and cooling. But if we remove everybody's obligation to subsidize new gas hookups, then the economics change sort of very, very quickly. But only politics is in the way, and this is something that that only the fossil fuel lobbies and the fossil fuel interests are basically preventing our leaders from doing, because none of you are calling your state representatives and telling them, hey, I love to pay for my neighbor's free gas connection, right? This is not something that the people of New York State are asking for. This is only the fossil fuel industry that sort of has our politicians in their grip. That's okay. So New York passed a landmark climate law in 2019, and sort of that law asked for a climate action council to be set up to actually put the goals of the climate law into an implementable plan. So New York State needs to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 85% by 2050 by law, and the Climate Action Council was basically tasked with preparing a plan to give a detailed roadmap to meet that goal. And they released their scoping plan recently in December after 3 years of work. But the moment the climate law was passed in 2019, the fossil fuel industry, since then the fossil fuel industry has been trying to derail New York climate law. So first they were essentially trying to weaken the scoping plan, and in which they mostly did not succeed. And the reason is that the scoping plan was being prepared by experts who don't have to run for election. So the work of the Climate Action Council was mostly free from politics, not entirely, because the governor still has a lot of the governor still has a lot of power over the Climate Action Council, because several members of the Climate Action Council are the heads of state agencies who report to the governor. But anyway, the Climate Action Council put forth a fairly decent plan, and the fossil fuel industry has sort of now kicked into high gear in to prevent the lawmakers from actually implementing that plan. And this is something that has been going on for decades, and the fossil fuel industry's campaign against climate action is sort of captured in vivid detail in this Frontline series, the 50-part series. Highly recommended. That came out about a year back, and there are unmistakable sort of fingerprint of the tactics that the fossil fuel industries have been using all these years to prevent climate action, detailed in this frontline kind of series, with the fingerprints of that all over what's happening in New York State right now. And so these are images from YouTube ads that my son started seeing after we converted our own home to all electric operation. Um, uh, the- the continuation, okay. Yeah. So my son asked me, "Hey, Dad, do you think we did the right thing? Because I'm seeing on YouTube that heat pumps don't work in cold weather." Uh, so this is sort of a set of screen screenshots of uh, to sort of give you a glimpse of what's going on. I have one more slide. I think I. Okay. So everything that has been going on in New York State has been compiled into a report, a New York gaslighting report, which you can access through this QR code or using this this Bitly link. Um, and it's quite eye-opening. And it's not even up to date. It's up to date only until December. And there is a lot of interesting stuff that has happened this year, which is still not in the report. But this report sort of tells you why New York State is not moving as rapidly as it should with climate action. So the politics of yeah, this was a slide I was thinking of. So the politics of climate action are dominated by fossil fuel industries, lobbying and disinformation campaigns. The industry is specifically concerned about New York State because New York is a big state. They don't want to lose their business. But also, New York State was one of the first states in the nation to come up with a comprehensive climate plan. And the fossil fuel industry does not want this plan to succeed because that would set a precedent. And then other states will start copying. The other states are already copying our law. And which is why the fossil fuel industry is hell-bent on defeating climate action in New York State. So the tentacles of the industry's sort of reach are everywhere. They are doing direct public outreach through robocalls, social broadcast and print media. And the ad that my son saw was was a part of the disinformation campaign on social media. They are quoting community boards and doing sort of their own presentations with mostly disinformation. They're reaching out to business groups, and I'll give an example in a minute. Community groups, the lobbies, the fossil fuel lobbies are all over, all blue. Gas utilities, propane delivery companies, and heating oil delivery companies, they have their customer information, which they are essentially misusing. There was a news report about robocalls in the Buffalo area done by National Fuel and Gas. So they were calling their customers and telling them that the climate law, New York's climate law, will bankrupt them, and if we implement that, they won't have enough electricity and they will freeze. So they should call their legislators to oppose the climate law. So things like that. And earned media through op-eds. And the campaign is extremely well coordinated between fossil fuel industry and the business groups that are allied with them, and the lawmakers. And I'll just show you some examples of that. So talking of earned media, this is an image of an opinion piece written by a vice president of National Grid. And among other things, it has this language. So the gas utilities are trying to promote alternatives to fossil-free alternatives to natural gas. But these fossil-free alternatives are actually not real solutions. They're false solutions. We can't go into all the details of why you cannot replace natural gas with hydrogen, but for now, just take my word for it that we cannot replace natural gas with hydrogen in utility pipelines or with other alternatives like renewable natural gas. So anyway, but National Grid is still, in order to delay electrification and delay climate action, National Grid's proposal is to use what they call green hydrogen. And they put in this op-ed that green hydrogen is produced by separating hydrogen out of water molecules, leaving only water vapor behind. And this is actually just factually incorrect. When you take hydrogen from the water molecule, you have oxygen. You can't take hydrogen out of water molecules and still have water left. Now, this is a picture from a commentary in the Albany Times Union, written by the CEO of Center for Economic Growth and the Capital Region Chamber of Commerce. And this op-ed has exactly ditto the same thing. Green hydrogen is produced by separating hydrogen out of water molecules, leaving only water vapor. So this is like the smoking gun. That there is this solution between these people at the Capital Region Chamber and National Grid. Then an op-ed appeared in Newsday on Long Island by a local business leader, and which had exactly the same language. The Business Council is vehemently opposed to any climate action that will reduce gas use in New York State, and it's not surprising because the chairperson of the Business Council is also the president of National Fuel Gas Corporation. So basically, they have a reason to basically promote national fuels point of view, and the fact that they are a regressive organization can also be is also visible right here. Donna DeCarlos has been the chairperson for 3 years. They still call her the chairman. Okay, and then there are front groups. They have been reported on by the media. New York for Affordable Energy is a front group funded by the American Petroleum Institution. Many of our gas utilities, National Fuel Gas, National Grid, pipeline companies like Williams, and they are highly invested in this campaign, using all these tactics to derail climate action in New York State. This is a campaign from this front group that started less than a month ago. You can read this. This was an internal email that we were able to intercept, sent by the executive director of this front group, talking about let's see, talking about digital and TV ads, and they also talk about robocalls. We will also be starting robocalls this week, which will focus on building electrification bills currently being considered in the Senate and Assembly. So, so you can see where a lot of opposition to building electrification is coming from. This Smarter New York Energy is disinformation website set up by the New York Propane Gas Association and and the sort of the fuel oil delivery industry. The ads that my son saw on YouTube were put up by this group called Smarter New York Energy. Smarter New York Energy is running Facebook ads as we speak. They started a new one just yesterday, and this one was started sort of last week. And yeah, so these are the ads that, and each of these ads are basically have completely false information. For example, this one talks about why our grid will not be able to handle heat pumps, and these are sort of people all over New York are seeing this on their social media. And I'm going to stop sharing this and share three quick clips with you that we have intercepted from the fossil fuel industry's disinformation campaign. So you can hear the fossil fuel executives and their media planners talking about their plans of defeating New York climate action. So I'm going to share and go to advanced, share a video. Okay. So this is this guy explaining. This is from the New York Propane Gas Association Fall 2021 conference, and where these people are scheming on what they're going to do.
New York State Propane Gas Association Fall 2021 conference.
To muster the political opposition that we need to attract moderate Democrats in places like Long Island and Westchester and Rockland County. But now, we introduce some messaging to them about the downsides to see, okay, what were the messages that were most persuasive? So we created a website, that's the base of the campaign, but then there are these digital ads. We positioned this as a tax. We called it Stop New York's $20,000 home heat tax. You see a lot of women in these. That's because the research also showed that women were much more likely to shift their position on this.
We put hundreds and hundreds of messages out there.
So you saw where the misinformation about the grid is coming from. So they have all these things that you saw in this person's spreadsheet, and they did focus group, figure out which are the messages that are most effective. So the fact that a grid is going to break down is one of their effective messaging, which is why they're talking about it. And the other thing they talk about is affordability and reliability, because these are sort of great talking points. So I'm going to share the second clip now, and then a quick third clip, and then we will finish.
Our plan is for more, bigger, better. We plan on more contributors, bigger reach in the state, better results, right? And one of the things we're really excited about is that the Downstate Oil Association, NISEC, the Upstate Oil Association, EC, and other allies, other people who are involved in this space, but particularly those, are contributing significant funds to help get the word out to the population. But we need more. We're about 2/3 of the way to where we really need to be for this year. So the particular messaging themes that we know resonate most to get people's attention and get them get them to voice their opinions are the issues of affordability, reliability, particularly in their home and the electric grid and in their cars, and finally choice. The fact that this is being forced down their throats in many ways, and they don't like that.
Okay, so this was the second one. And now the third one will give you an idea of the coordination. So I showed you these segments of the op-ed, supposedly unrelated op-eds in Newsday and Long Island, Albany Times Union, and by National Grid, having the same copy-pasted language, but there is more evidence of coordination. So you heard about affordability and reliability. The New York State Assembly had a hearing on all electric buildings, in which they invited sort of everyone, advocates, industry people, and I'm going to show you a selection of clips from that hearing.
I want to focus on the issue of affordability and reliability.
To get New York to its goal that put affordability and reliability, and in some cases, hybrid systems provide more affordability and reliability. Solutions that achieve the shared goals while supporting reliability and affordability.
The All Electric Buildings Act could have serious repercussions in terms of energy reliability, resiliency, and affordability that will impair energy reliability and increase costs for consumers.
Leveraging existing asset condition projects really with affordability, reliability in mind.
Nor can it upset energy reliability and availability and affordability. That we answer the questions related to energy reliability and affordability. How are we going to ensure that we're getting energy reliably and affordably? You know, listen to the folks that have talked about energy reliability and affordability.
Businesses care about costs, affordability, and reliability.
We're concerned about supply chain reliability of the grid and affordability so that
we want to see a more organized effort to push back on the CLCPA. We should all be gathering together to push back.
Okay, so you saw how they figured that, hey, affordability and reliability is a great message, and they spread this all over the state to their their partners, business groups, the Republican politicians who support their point of view, and everyone sort of ganged up and started talking about affordability and reliability. So this is just what happened in that hearing, but it's also happening sort of every day in various messaging mechanisms that I showed on that slide. So let's get back to the slide and finish. Okay, so this is where we were at. You saw Smarter New York Energy was brainchild of the New York Propane Gas Association. Okay, so right now there are proposals from the New York State Senate in the budget to these are a couple of relevant proposals to what we spoke about, what we saw in this presentation. The New York Home Energy Affordable Transition Act will eliminate ratepayer-funded subsidies, which is one of the things that's driving gas bills, driving up gas costs, and essentially subsidizing the buildup of new gas infrastructure. The All-Electric New Buildings Act, and again, the Senate and the Assembly and the Governor have three different proposals. The Senate has the strongest proposal, but it's sort of it's being discussed and negotiated in the bill, and all these sort of campaigns by the fossil fuel industry, they are trying to essentially derail it, or they're trying to get it out of the budget. So that's what's happening as we speak. So in the next slide, I will, if any of you want to actually support these two bills, which will remove all ratepayers' obligation to fund the free new gas hookups and the expansion of gas network, and the mandate for all electric new buildings, then this is sort of an action link to support these provisions that the fossil fuel industry is fighting against. And I believe that's okay. So if you actually use this QR code or go to this website, these are the actions that you will see. First one is a very quick one. Just send a form letter. It takes less than a minute. Then there is one to leave a voicemail for Governor Hochul, and depending on how motivated people are, they can continue down the list, leave messages for the speaker and the Senate leader to make sure that these bills stay in the budget. And after that, you can call your own assembly member and your own state senator. So all these actions you can reach from this this link here. And okay, so now we're finished, and I can take questions on any of the topics.
Anne, I believe you had a question or a comment, and I don't know if you wanted to go through some of the other ones on the chat.
Okay, great. Well, we have a question directly related to this last section, which was, do you think these acts will get passed with the state budget? These two, the heat and the all-electric building, or are they more ones that we choose?
So the all-electric new buildings has a higher chance of passing. It has a very good chance, actually. But in what form it passes, that remains to be seen. So the governor's version is a very weak version. It doesn't start until 2029 for most buildings. And in 2026, it starts for just residential buildings, 3 floors or lower. So it's a very weak bill, and it has lots of exceptions and loopholes. The Senate has the strongest version, and the Assembly has something in between. So it remains to be seen what actually comes out in the budget. And the fossil fuel industry is sort of fighting very hard to get them out of the budget, get it out of the budget, or at least weaken it as much as possible. The other bill, which is about the obligation of all ratepayers to fund free gas hookups and fund the expansion of gas network, that's only in the Senate one house. So that obviously has a lower chance. We have to get the governor and the assembly to agree to doing that. But that's also the one that makes even more sense because there is literally no opposition from any citizen to that bill, and there's no reason for anyone to oppose that bill because it basically helps lower people's prices, gas prices, and does not force and stops people from being forced to fund the expansion of gas infrastructure. And it's only the fossil fuel industry and some of their national grid unions, for example, who are opposed to that bill. But I did show a slide with the thermal energy network, and there is a pathway for sort of a decent segment of the workforce to transition from gas delivery system to thermal energy system. And even for other workers, it's a transition. So the gas infrastructure is not going away. We just want to stop it from expanding. And passing these bills essentially sends a signal to the new workers to not not go into the gas delivery gas delivery business, but the mid-career and older workers, they still have the opportunity to continue through their vocational lives as we slowly as the climate law or the scoping plan proposes to transition off the gas system by 2050. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, I had a question a while back, and I'm not sure whether it directly relates to the building electrification, but you had shared some health information related to fossil fuel combustion. Is that health information available at the neighborhood level or only at the state level? For example, can you isolate the information for a specific environmental justice community, identify specific health challenges related to buildings at that level?
I can the information that I presented was actually at the state level. Then and the links are in the slides. There is more. There is a study on the disproportionate impacts, and the link to that is also on the slide. So which talks about the impact on the different types of neighborhoods. I don't believe there is a detailed study sort of at the zip code level or looking at specific neighborhoods. The study only talks about the types of neighborhoods.
Okay. Let's see. Amy Allard has asked whether all of the actions that you've described, would they require legislative action, and what can be done in lieu of?
So yes, all the actions that I spoke about, they will need legislative action because we need to change the state public service law for to stop the subsidized expansion of gas infrastructure. And that is not that can be done sort of through any regulation. The Public Service Commission can do a little bit of that, but since they are not mandated to do it, they just refuse to do it. So yes, everything that I spoke about requires legislative action, and I'll put that link to support that legislative action. I just wanted to put that.
I noticed, Anne,
End
that,
of the questions in the chat.
and I noticed that Florence has a comment about another book. I didn't know if Florence, if you wanted to unmute and make that comment. Let's see, Florence Carnahan.
Yes.
No. Did you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
It's
Yeah.
actually my husband is making the comment. 'cause he read the book.
I'm not, this is John Carnahan. I read the book. So the book is by Dr. Mark Jacobson, and he has written over the years a number of books and many peer-reviewed articles about the fact that we already have technology existing, and the only thing that keeps us from electrifying across the broad spectrum is the lack of political will and the lack of political courage. And he goes into each aspect of electrification, from mobiles to buildings to home heating, and goes into each aspect of it to show how we are either at the point where we can do it right now with an existing technology, or we can ramp up very quickly to do it with a little more political incentive. And I just think everybody ought to read the book. It's a great book.
I agree. That's what I said at the beginning of this presentation, that it's not just building electrification, a lot of other things. It's mostly, and even IPCC says that we have all the technology, we have all the resources, we can do it economically. Not only economically, we can actually improve people's lives, because the health impact of burning fossil fuels is just so big that just the savings from healthcare, the healthcare savings, will pay for the entire transition. The health impact is just so big. So it's completely a matter of political will and political courage.
His other point is that the hybrid system that you pointed out that some of the fossil fuel companies are proposing is an absolute loss, because if you have any mix of fossil fuels in there, you've lost the battle.
Not only you've lost the battle, that is actually more costly than either of the two systems. And the only reason the fossil fuel industry is promoting that is because the gas utilities are a monopoly. So if anyone who gets sucked into that system and is hooked onto that system, then the gas utility can keep extracting money from those customers, and those customers have no choice. But those hybrid systems that this national grid guy was talking about, they're more costly than either gas or electrification.
The other interesting thing that he did was to couple climate change and the need to make the change to electrification to better healthcare, and the fact that any continued use of fossil fuel is a real negative in terms of healthcare for any of them, whether it's coal or oil or natural gas, whatever. Each of them brings a certain set of health issues, which, as long as you continue to use it, they're going to continue to be there.
And the costs will be high. He also did a number of years ago, a state-by-state recording of how each state can go from fossil fuels to renewables. And that's all available online too. I'm sure you've seen it, but I know not everybody knows about it.
It was a plan actually for each individual state. And one of the first one he ever did was New York State.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of his collaborators, Dr. Bob Howard, from Cornell University, who is actually a member of the Climate Action Council, and there are sort of aspects of that plan that are actually in New York State plan. Not entirely, because there are sort of other points of there's some other points of view, and not everyone agrees 100% with their plan, but still there are components of that in the New York State climate coping plan. And I have not read the book, but it looks like everything that you're saying is sort of I try to include that in my presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to open this up one more time. If anyone else has a question, if you want to hit the raise hand function, or if you have a comment, hit the raise hand function so we can get any other questions in.
Sherry, I just want to also
I'm losing you.
And you may want to turn off your video because we can't hear you. Your voice is breaking up.
not be watching the chat.
And you're breaking up. We can't hear you.
Capitalregion.com as
Okay, for anyone that's trying to hear Ann, I think what she's indicating is in the chats, there's a couple of links, and you might need to capture those quickly before you leave the chat here. There's one that Deb Peck provided for NYSERDA, and of course, Anshul already provided the one on gas-free New York. So I think that's what Ann was trying to indicate, if anyone wants to capture those quickly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've got connectivity issues, but the other one was
Yeah, we keep losing you.
Yeah, it's a good thing to remember that if you're having bandwidth issues, turn off
but
your
I've now
video.
lost all of my
And the gas free doesn't literally mean gas free. It just means no new gas. It's just the name of the link. It's not asking for to take away anyone's existing systems or to force anyone to switch. Although in many cases, switching could be economical and healthier. But that's only for new construction, because it does not make sense at this point to keep digging us deeper into the hole.
All right, well, I don't see, oh, I see Marion Munch is looking, if you can unmute your mic and
Yeah,
ask your question.
one quick question. So Carnahans, were you talking about no miracles needed? You're muted.
That's the one.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's it. And so Anshul, I would like to thank you for a very enlightening and informative discussion. That was a great presentation, and I'm sure everyone takes away something from it. There's absolutely no way you can't. I want to remind everyone that this recording will show up on our website. Usually it takes a couple of days. And other than that, thank you, Joanna, for your committee and all the work that you do. And see you in May at the next meetup. Thank you very much.